All right, what's going on, everybody? Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Got a great day of boxing ahead of us. We got obviously Canelo Alvarez versus Callum Smith. Looking forward to that. And probably I will jump on later and do a live cast for that one. So I hope you join me in that video as well. Also, always remember, don't forget to check out the Ringside Reporter podcast every Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time with myself and co-host Eric Lorta. So let's get into this. 2020, as we already know, has been a horrible year. Okay, it's been a bad year in more ways than one. Uh, Obviously, we have the pandemic, and we have a lot of other tragedies that have occurred. We lost a lot of good people this year, but another negative dark cloud that I've seen manifest itself this year is 2020 seems to be, for me, the year of the sore loser. And again, we can go back in the history of the sport, and fighters don't always take losses graciously. Fighters do make excuses. We can go back to George Foreman claiming that his water was drugged back when he fought Muhammad Ali, the ropes were too loose, and this and that. But one thing that we're noticing is it's becoming more and more prevalent recently. We're just seeing everyone or many fighters. I don't want to use the word everyone because I don't want to paint it with a broad brush, but we're seeing many fighters come out with outlandish excuses they're making that, first of all, they're waiting months down the road, sometimes 6 months to 8 months down the road. And in this case, um, the person waited about 3 months down the road to complain about this. And it's just mind boggling. So, first off, let's get started. We all know about the situation with Deontay Wilder, the glove gate, all the multitude and barrage of good morning, G Funky. The multitude and the barrage of excuses that were made by Deontay Wilder. Okay, and everyone jumped all over Deontay Wilder. Okay, so those same people that jumped on Deontay Wilder, they should jump on Vasyl Lomachenko. First of all, he complained about the shoulder. Okay, obviously the shoulder wasn't 100%. But again, we've said this time and time again. What fighter ever is 100% going into a fight? Floyd Mayweather has had his shoulder problems, his hand problems. Bernard Hopkins also come out and said, I don't think I've ever been 100% in any fight, whether it be mentally or physically. You could have something going on in your personal life. A good friend of yours could have just died. Could have been going through some stuff with your wife. Could have having some financial problems, whatever. You can have a nagging injury. Every morning when I wake up, I have these nagging injuries. They're not unbearable, of course, but I wake up every day. 51 years old. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you don't use it, you lose it. But if you use it too much, then there's going to be a residual effect on that. So every day I wake up, I feel something. You know what I mean? I just soldier through it. I accept it. It's a part of life. I don't let those things, my shortcomings or deficiencies, overcome me and deter me from doing what I want to do throughout the course of the day. I still get done when I need to get done. And fighters know that if they're going to box, that they're going to be using their bodies and putting their bodies through something that the body's not normally supposed to go through. And there's going to be some repercussions to that. If you're going to sit there and train and throw punches and throw hundreds of punches 5, 6, 7 days a week, you're going to be doing some type of physical training. You're going to be sparring. The body's going to break down. So Vasyl Lomachenko did suffer the shoulder injury. We know that. I don't think it's questionable. I think he suffered it, got the surgery, whatever. But so did Teofimo Lopez. He had an injured foot, injured right foot, and rumored to have an injured right wrist. And he wasn't 100%. But, more people are talking about how Lomachenko was injured and putting more of an emphasis on that as opposed to Teofimo Lopez's injuries. So that was excuse number one for Lomachenko. But for whatever reason, everyone seemed to kind of turn a blind eye to the fact that Teofimo Lopez was injured as well, and probably injured worse, because if you have an injured right foot, then you're going to have problems. And if the foot was broken, it had to have surgery. So it was broken bad. Most people that have an injured broken foot, they just get put in a cast. But this guy had to actually have surgeries. He had broken bones. He had torn ligaments. He had a really, really compromised right foot. So he couldn't push off. Imagine if he had 100% right foot and he was pushing off with full strength with that right hand, what would have happened? He hurt Lomachenko in that 12th round. He hurt him. He had that was probably the most dominant round in the fight from both fighters. So, when you look at that, then, that speaks volumes about what Teofimo Lopez had to overcome. And credit to Lomachenko too. I mean, he soldiered on despite his injured shoulder. I mean, we're not taking anything away from Lomachenko. But here's what we can criticize. Let's read some of these quotes, because I know a lot of people have already made videos about this. And I was going to make a video yesterday. I got tied up. I couldn't do it. So I'm a little bit of a Johnny-come-lately on this topic. But I wanted to talk about this topic because, again, we got to call it down the middle. We can't sit there and jump all over Deontay Wilder when he makes excuses and give Vasyl Lomachenko a pass. Okay? Can't do that. Can't do that, because we are, the shoulder was excuse number one. Now here comes excuse number two, and we don't even know what excuse number three is going to be. Okay, we don't even know what excuse number four is going to be. Okay, so let's read this now. This is a quote from Vasyl Lomachenko. Okay, it says, "If we counted strictly by the book, the scorecards would be different," said Lomachenko on his social media page. Okay, he claims that I took one round the first half of the fight, which is debatable because I didn't give him any rounds, and I'm going to kind of talk about that as well. Okay, I took one round the first half of the fight and 5 rounds for the second one, namely rounds 7 through 11, which I don't think he won round 7, but some people do. We've got it 6-6, which is a draw. If it's a draw, we use the unspoken rule of boxing. First of all, again, I hate these unwritten, unspoken rules of boxing. That's bullshit. There's nothing written in the rule book that says there's unwritten rules, unspoken rules. So these guys who think just because they're champions, they should get special treatment, just because they're the A side or they have status, all of a sudden they go into the fight. It's like playing a game of pool and you're spotting the guy like the first 3 balls if you're playing him in 9 ball, and he has to only sink 4 through 9 while you have to sink 1 through 9. Like you don't give guys unwritten or unspoken advantages just because of their status or because they're champion. There's nothing in the rules of boxing that say you have to do that. So this guy has a sense of entitlement already because I'm Vasyl Lomachenko. I'm the champion. So he's already adding an unspoken rule or unwritten rule because of who he is. Once again, that's a prima donna right there. That's someone who's looking for special treatment, and that's not the case. That should not be given in any type of athletic competition, in my opinion. Okay, so he says, so if it's a draw, we use the unspoken rule of boxing. We look for rounds 10 through 12. I won 2 of them. It's 2-1. So what does that even mean? Okay, so if you look at the championship, here's another unwritten rule. Oh, if you win the championship rounds, then you should automatically win the fight if the fight's close. It's another bullshit rule. You watch the fight, you score each round individually, and at the end of the fight, whatever the scorecards come out to, you add them up, and that's what the score is. Okay. In no other sport do we have this ridiculous stupidity where, oh, the champion gets the close rounds, the A side gets the close rounds. If you win the later rounds or the championship rounds, you should get the fight. And win if you lose the first 3/4 of the round and you come on strong in the last 30 seconds, you should win the round and all this. And then people look at that second round. I watched that second round 1,000 times. And even that punch that landed at the end, it was a good punch, but it wasn't as clean as and as dominant. It wasn't as powerful of a punch as everyone's saying. Like, I watched that round, and like Lopez was landing jabs and right hands and going to the body that whole round. And again, this is my opinion, and I don't want to sound like my opinion's better than anyone else's opinion, but the only way you could have given that second round to Lomachenko is if you were really looking to and trying hard to give it to him. I went back and watched it. It was like, you could argue that was one of the most dominant rounds in the fight for Lopez outside of the 12th. I think the second and the 12th were possibly the two most dominant rounds for Lopez. I just think that Lomachenko's outputting that. He landed like one punch at the end, and it was a good punch, but it wasn't like a phenomenal punch that staggered Lopez. I just don't understand how people could give that second round to Lomachenko. So, if it's a draw, we use the unspoken rule, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So he goes, here's another quote. He said they knew that the possibility of a knockout from my side was around 20%. What does it say? It's about being bribed. There was nothing about honest judging. So why was the judging not honest? Really? Let's take a statistic here. We're gonna go on to BoxRec, okay? And I'm gonna explain something to you, a feature that BoxRec has, okay? And this is a really good feature because it kind of gives you an interpretation of how the general public sees things in regards to scoring a fight. So when you go to BoxRec and you click on, there's a tab at the end when you go to a specific fight. So I'm on Vasyl Lomachenko's BoxRec, okay? And it says Teofimo Lopez, that's his last fight. And if you go all the way to the right, it says scores. And when you click on that, what it does is it gives you the 3 judges' scorecards, and it also gives you the average fan scorecard, okay? Gives you the average fan scorecard. And I believe I open this up and I click on the average fan scorecard, and about 200 people, 200 random fans scored this fight. Okay? 200. So they take a, it's almost like polling when you do polling in politics or any type of thing, and you get statistics based off of polling. So this is basically what the general public thought when they what their opinion and interpretation of how this fight should have been scored and how they scored it. So let's look at the average fan scorecard. Round 1, it was overwhelmingly for Lopez. Round 2, once again, overwhelmingly for Lopez. Round 3, overwhelmingly for Lopez. Round 4, overwhelmingly for Lopez. Round 5, overwhelmingly for Lopez. Round 6, overwhelmingly for Lopez. And round 7, actually, the fans had that one down the middle. So 50-50. So that was, according to the average scorecard by the fans, that was a swing round. Once again, I don't really think that was a swing round, but I'm not going to argue against it I will argue against round 2 because I just don't see how you could give that round to I just couldn't see that round going to Lomachenko. He was so inactive, and he was really being outworked there. And I think Lopez did a lot of good work. Another thing, Lopez did a lot of good work to the body that was being unnoticed by a lot of people here. So Lopez was always landing something. Okay, he was always touching Lomachenko. So, round 7 was a swing round. Now, rounds 8 through 11 were all Lomachenko rounds, according to the fans. So, round 12, once again, overwhelmingly for Teofimo Lopez. So, if you add up the average fan scorecard, okay, 116 and 113, Lopez wins. And this is the perception of the public. And you have to assume that these people scored the fight unbiasedly. Okay? So the average scorecard was 116 and 113. Now, we can complain all we want about the 119, 109. We can complain all we want about the 117, 111. And some people are even complaining about the 116 and 112. People who pick Lomachenko to win, seems like the only two acceptable scorecards are 114 and 114 and 115 and 113. 115 to 113 is not an unreasonable scorecard, but I, in my opinion, think 115 and 113 is not a bad score. It's not unreasonable, like I said. 114 and 114, I think, is just as bad as 119 and 109, because there's no way this fight was a draw. There's just no way. Because, again, if you have a guy that clearly won 7 rounds 1 through 6, and round 12. I even think round 7 was pretty clear, in my opinion, but I will concede that maybe that wasn't, okay? Because I'm not the end-all, be-all of judging. So you got one guy who clearly won 7 rounds, and you get another guy who clearly won 4 rounds. And then you have one swing round in there. So if you were to give Lomachenko every possible benefit of the doubt in this fight, the best you can come up with is 115 and 113 for Lopez. Now, you could watch rounds 8 through 11. I personally thought 8 was a swing round as well. I was tempted to give that one to Lopez as well, but I said this was close, could have gone either way. I don't want to give Lopez every bit of the benefit of the doubt because I didn't want to come off as biased. I was tempted to give round 8 to Lopez. I thought that could have gone his way. So to sit there and say 8 through 11, but I'm just going to give Lomachenko the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to say that I think there was 3 clear Lomachenko rounds, but I'm just going to concede that, okay, we'll give him 4 because I think that round 8 could have gone either way as well. This is my opinion. So, well, I mean, again, Ryan, I disagree with you, and most people are going to disagree with you, but if that's how you, I can't tell you how to think, how to feel. I've known you over the years. Because I have not a personal relationship, but I kind of have a long-term relationship with you, via social media, and we talk privately, via Facebook chat. I get the sense that I know the type of person you are. If that's how you feel, that's how you feel. I just disagree with it. I think most people will disagree with that. I just don't think the 6th round could have gone either way, but that's just how I feel. But again, I think the 8th round, I don't think it's out of the realm of it's not impossible, in my opinion, to give Lopez the 8th round because I thought that round was kind of close. And I think the reason why a lot of people gave that to Lomachenko is because he did so much more than he did in the first 7. So they're doing like a comparative analysis to what he did in the 8th round, as compared to the first 7. So again, but we're going to concede the point that 8, 9, 10, and 11 were clear Lomachenko rounds, and 1 through 6 were clear. 1 through 6 were clear Lopez rounds, and round 12. So you have a fight where one guy won 7 clear rounds and one guy won 4 clear rounds. In my opinion, and this is according to the average fan scorecard as well. This is 200 random fans that scored the fight. I scored the fight 116 and 112, which I think was probably the most popular scorecard in my opinion. I think most people who scored this fight, if you were to take the average scorecard, I would venture to guess that it was 116 and 112. That's mostly what people had it. Some people, and again, if you had it 117 and 111, then it could have been it could have been that way as well. Just because a fight is close, it doesn't mean that the guy who won it didn't win it clearly. There's such thing as a clear. I don't think the fight was close because I had it 116 and 112. I thought it was competitive in spots, but I don't think it was close. If in my opinion, I thought Lopez clearly won 8 rounds, but I'm going to concede that possibly the 7th could have been a swing. In my opinion, I thought Lopez clearly won 8 rounds, in my opinion. Okay? I thought he clearly won 8 rounds. So if you score a fight 116 and 112, I don't think that's a close fight per se. I think you can argue it could be competitive, possibly, but once again, a 10 round to 1 fight, or excuse me, a 10 round to 2 fight. If you give one guy 10 rounds, you give another guy 2 rounds, and every single round that the guy who won 10 rounds, that it was a competitive round and he eked out the round, then that's still a competitive fight, but it's not a competitive fight on the scorecards. So there's no such thing as winning by a round. If you win 7 rounds and your opponent wins 5, then you win by 2 rounds. You can't. There's no. I hate it when people say, "Oh, this guy won by a round." It's impossible to win a fight by a round when there's 12 rounds. One guy has to win 7 and another guy has to win 5. So that's 2 rounds. You don't win by a round unless you're scoring an even round. If you didn't score an even round, then Lopez won by 2 rounds, bare minimum. 7 rounds to 5 is 2 rounds. 7 is 2 more rounds than 5. I don't believe in even rounds. That's my opinion. If you scored an even round, then yeah. I mean, did you score an even round in the fight? What was your scorecard? Tell me what your scorecard was, Georgie, because my scorecard was 116 and 111. I think I just don't score even rounds, and most American judges don't score even rounds. That's a European UK thing. No judge, and I don't know anybody who scored any round in that fight even. I can't find one person. So if you can tell me what your scorecard was, then I have to accept it. That's your opinion. But like the fact that he's accusing the judges of being bribed. First of all, I talked to somebody over off the record. I talked to somebody that is in the camp of Teofimo Lopez. Okay, off the record. I have the contact information for Teofimo Lopez. I have a lot of ways to get in contact with Teofimo Lopez. I have a lot of ways to get in contact with his PR people. Unfortunately, I've had a hard time of getting him on air. He's been swamped with interviews because he's obviously and he's going to do. I totally understand. He's going to do the big channels first, the big outlets first. So I'm going to be honest with you, and this is just, you can believe me if you want. You don't have to believe me, but I had a conversation with somebody in the Lopez camp, and quote unquote, when Teofimo walked back to the locker room, we walked down the hall, and all the people from Top Rank, the high-ranking officials, the guys who had big positions at Top Rank, they had their head down. They did not want me to win this fight, quote unquote. They did not really expect him. That's why there was no rematch clause, because They were confident that Lopez was going to win. I mean, excuse me, Lomachenko was going to win. So to sit there and say that the deck was stacked against Lomachenko, and then people can argue, well, Lomachenko's getting older, you know, Lopez is the young up and coming upstart. He was the guy that everybody would want to get behind because he's the young guy. He's better on the mic. People after the fact, no one was saying this before the fight, but after the fact, everyone was saying this because how everyone has friggin' their Monday morning quarterback. So after the fact, everyone was saying, "Oh, well, Lopez is better for the sport. He's younger. He's better. He's got a better personality. He speaks English. Blah 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 blah." But before the fight, Lomachenko was this super guy that, and these are great accomplishments. I'm not diminishing them. He was the guy that was the fastest guy to win world titles in 3 different weight classes, 2-time Olympic champion. This, and if all you had to do was watch the promotion leading up to this fight, they were all of it was for Lomachenko. They were basically comparing him to Roberto Duran, saying he has a higher power punch connect ratio than Roberto Duran. So they were really riding high on Lomachenko during the promotion of this fight, leading up to this fight. And you can say that what I just told you about the Lopez thing is bullshit, and that's fine. You have the right to. You don't have to believe me. But my history is pretty. My reputation speaks for itself. My history is good. If I say something, I don't just say something just to say something. Okay, I don't say something just to say something. But they did not, according to Team Lopez. And again, you could say that of course they're going to say that because that's them. But the reason why I believe them is because I look at empirical data and I watch how that fight was promoted. And Lopez was not really being promoted heavily in that fight. All of the promotion and all of the accolades, and even during the broadcast, all they were talking about was Lomachenko. And even during the broadcast, Joe Tessitore and even Andre Wood, who I love a lot, he's one of my favorite fighters of all time. I think he's a phenomenal commentator. I just didn't like how he commentated this particular fight. But they were so biased towards Lomachenko during the commentary of this fight. And even Bradley was going against them. He was kind of fighting them, And again, my source also told me that there was an offline conversation between Teofimo Lopez and Bradley, and they both talked about how they just didn't agree with the commentary during the fight. How Bradley said to Lopez, "I just did not see what they were seeing. I thought you clearly won the fight." So it is what it is. You can believe whatever you want to believe. I'm just telling you the information I got, and I did talk to sources. I did talk to people in the camp, talk to PR people. I even had an offline conversation with Teofimo Lopez himself. And I asked him to come on the show. He said, "You're going to have to go through my PR person." And it's been again, they've been swamped over there. So if you noticed, he's only doing the big mainstream outlets. He's not doing any small outlets. So do have the contact information for him and the PR people over there. But I haven't had a chance to get him on here. I've been trying hard. And it is what it is. I respect that. I mean, obviously he's going to do his victory lap, but I've had offline conversations with his PR person and him himself. So I'm just telling you that the deck was not stacked against Lomachenko. If anything, it was stacked against Lopez. Because again, there was no rematch clause in this fight for a reason. And you can argue, well, they didn't have to have a rematch clause because Arum had both fighters, blah, 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 blah. But Lomachenko's management could have had a rematch clause because if they wanted to negotiate it, they could have pushed for it. They didn't even negotiate for it. They were so confident that they were going to win. Tom Blake was so confident that he was going to win that they didn't have a rematch clause. Bob didn't care possibly either way. You can argue that because he had both fighters under contract. That's fine. But why didn't Team Lomachenko push for a rematch? If you notice, no matter who Anthony Joshua fights, even before the Andy Ruiz loss, no matter what the conditions are, no matter who he fights, Eddie Hearn and his management team, Anthony Joshua's management team, they have a rematch clause for every fight. And Bob Arum criticizes it and whatever. But Bob Arum, as much as I like the guy and I respect the guy, and I've talked to the guy several times, you've heard me, you've heard it on tape, whatever. Bob Arum is a hypocrite because when Crawford fought Brooke, there was a rematch clause because Bob Arum did not have options and did not have Kell Brook under contract. So you can argue that Bob Arum is a hypocrite because of that. Because he was sitting there talking shit about Eddie Hearn. Oh, every fight, there's a rematch clause. I think that's good business. If I had a fighter who was a champion, I would put a rematch clause in every single fight. I would. Whether people like it or not, from a managerial standpoint, I think that's the smart thing to do. And that's something that I would do as a handler. And as someone who's working for a particular fighter, obviously I would do everything I could to have the best interest for that fighter at heart, which I think Eddie Hearn, I criticize Eddie Hearn sometimes, but all in all, I think that he takes care of his fighters for the most part. Sometimes I think he puts Joshua ahead of everybody else and doesn't really fight hard enough for Dillian White. But once Eddie Hearn does have that fight signed and does have a fight signed for you, whatever, I think he stands behind you and pushes. And you know, you can argue about Eddie Hearn being in front of the camera too much, whatever. But if you really want to look at it objectively, at least him being in front of the camera, he has an opportunity to really help promote his fighters, which I think he does. You can argue that he didn't do enough for Dillian White, but again, you know, they had a lot of forces going against him with the WBC. The WBC was really biased towards Deontay Wilder, and they're always biased towards particular champions. They were biased towards Canelo Alvarez. They were biased towards Floyd Mayweather. So the WBC does have their favorites, and once they get behind a certain champion, you know, once you're a champion of the WBC, you fall under their protection program, in my opinion, from based off of what I've seen. So Lomachenko is not only accusing the judges of being bribed, but he's accusing Bob Arum in Top Rank. I'm hearing in certain articles, and I don't know if this is true or not. I don't know if this is what's being said and being put out there, but some articles that I've read, because there's a couple articles out there, he's even accusing Bob Arum and Top Rank as being the ones paying off the judges, as if there was a conspiracy against him. But once again, tell me if I'm wrong here. You guys can go back and watch and look at all the stuff, that all of the data and all of the information. Go back and look at everything that's been done to promote this fight between Lopez and Lomachenko, and you can just look and see how tilted and how more focused in this promotion they were on Lomachenko. Nobody thought very few people in the mainstream media. I can't find any. The only people I could find are people on YouTube who thought Lopez was going to win this fight. And most of us on here, we don't have a dog in the race. So if you look at mainstream media, they were the ones that all picked Lomachenko. I can't find any mainstream media person that picked Lopez. Probably, I think Bradley was the only one, to my knowledge. And anyone can correct me. Anyone can correct me if they want to. Beebs, we're not going to tell you you're wrong because you're going to fight with us. You know what the problem I have with you, Georgie? is you'll say something, but you don't explain your points. You have no data to back up your points. So when someone has a debate with me and they just say, "Well, I that's just how I feel. That's just what I believe," but they can't explain why they feel or why they believe that, then I just think it's a weak argument. The problem I always have with you is you make statements, you make claims, sort of like what Lomachenko's doing here. He has zero proof that these judges were bribed. There's zero incentive to bribe these judges because, again, they were doing good numbers with Lomachenko, putting him on regular ESPN. They were. People liked Lomachenko. People, mainstream people, guys like Stephen A. Smith, um, Skip Bayless, um, Colin Cowherd. He was like a lot of mainstream people were starting to talk about Lomachenko. He was starting to get some attention based off of, I think Top Rank actually did a great job promoting Lomachenko. And again, they were pushing that narrative. He had great accomplishments, being able to win those, whether or not you think he fought great guys, and you can question, everyone always is going to question a guy's resume. They're always going to question, who he fought and what, and they're going to try to diminish a guy's accomplishments. They're going to look at, oh, he didn't fight this guy. He fought this guy when he was too old. This guy was too small. Whatever. That's always going to happen. But just like when Lomachenko fought Rigondeaux, everyone was like, oh, he's ducking Rigondeaux. And then he fights Rigondeaux, and then he beats Rigondeaux handily, and then Rigondeaux's too small. So I'm not going to bash Lomachenko. Lomachenko did do what he did. Can you make an argument? Here's the thing. You can make an argument that Top Rank went out of their way to push this guy because, first of all, not only Top Rank, the WBO as well. First of all, he fights Orlando Salido, defends his WBO. I think that was, let me see if that was for the vacant. I think that was for the vacant WBO junior lightweight title. Let me go back just to refresh my memory. So, okay. That was for the vacant. I wasn't sure if he actually held it. So he fights Orlando Salido for the vacant WBO junior lightweight title. He loses the fight. Okay. Then in his very next fight, okay, coming off of a loss after fighting for the title and losing. And again, the fight was close. I had the fight close. I thought Salido won the fight. I picked Salido to win the fight, but I thought Lomachenko held his own in that fight regardless. And even in the 12th round, I thought he fought valiantly and he hurt Salido. And you could argue that he could have, he was on the verge of possibly stopping him. You can make all types of arguments for that fight. But then in his very next fight, he's allowed to fight for that same vacant title against Gary Russell, coming off of a loss. So, if you want to talk about special treatment, when does that ever happen? When does a guy fight for a vacant title, then lose, and then in his very next fight, be allowed to fight for that same vacant title after losing the first time, for the first fight? It's, that's special. You can argue that's special treatment. If anyone can ever show me an example where that has ever happened again. So in my opinion, Top Rank and the powers that be in boxing, they looked at this guy and they were really talking the amateur record. I think it was like 396-1, 2 gold medals. They were really pushing this guy hard. Whereas they weren't pushing Teofimo Lopez as hard. You could look at Top Rank, okay, you could look at Terrence Crawford, you could look at Teofimo Lopez, you could look at Ramirez, you could look at all the fighters that they have right now. Even Tyson Fury, okay? They're doing a pretty decent job at Tyson Fury, but, whatever, okay? All the fighters that they have, you can look at them. I don't think they've pushed anyone as hard at Top Rank as if they as they've pushed Lomachenko. Bob was sitting there once again, just like he when he had Pacquiao, and just like when he had Floyd. He was sitting there saying that he thinks this guy is one of the greatest fighters of all time. He puts him right up there with Muhammad Ali and Sugar Ray Leonard and Marvin Hagler and all the greats. Okay. So Top Rank was high on this guy. They weren't saying these things about anyone else. They weren't saying these things about friggin' Tyson Fury. They weren't saying these things about Terrence Crawford. They weren't saying these things about Jose Ramirez. They just weren't saying these things about other fighters. Okay? They just weren't pushing other fighters, or at least Bob Arum wasn't pushing other fighters like they were pushing Lomachenko. And again, I repeat, I urge you, go back and look and watch the fight. And look at what they were saying about Lomachenko. Look at how that whole production was done. And all they were talking about was comparing Lomachenko to the all-time greats. And I love it when Andre Ward came out and checked and he said, you got to look at strength of schedule. When Joe Tessitore made that statement, he's got a higher power punch percentage connect rate than the great Roberto Duran. Meanwhile, Duran has like 119 fights or 120 fights, whatever the case may be. You can go back and check. And Lomachenko's got what, like 15 fights, 16 fights? And you're going to make a comparison based off of that? That's like a guy getting up 10 times and he's batting 300. And then you're going to compare him to a guy that got up 300 times and he's batting maybe 287. And you're going to say, well, that guy's a better hitter than the guy who got up 300 times and hitting 200. No, he only got up 10 times. So to even make that comparison is outrageous. It's outlandish. It's biased. They were trying hard to push the narrative that this guy was an all-time great. And as I said, his accomplishments, I think, are very impressive. If I had a vote, I would vote him into the Hall of Fame tomorrow because he did do a lot in a short period of time. And he did fight the best guys that he could have fought. And he really never ducked anybody. And he did make an attempt to clean up 135. But obviously, Teofimo Lopez threw a monkey wrench in those plans. Big shock to God. Thank you so much. He says, legit loss, but no rematch clause. Lead me to believe that Bob would have screwed him if need be. Why? What's the incentive to screw him? What? Go back and listen to everything that was said before and leading up to that promotion. Everything was centered around Vasyl Lomachenko. Bob himself believed that Lomachenko was good. Like everyone over at Top Rank thought and expected Lomachenko to win that fight. So now, that's not the case. That's not the case. You know what they were saying? Teofimo Lopez is a young kid. He can come back. We can rebuild them. One lost, the same thing with Canelo when Canelo lost to Floyd. What did they do? They rebuilt them. They weren't happy that he lost to Floyd, but they weren't ready to friggin' pack up their tent and go home. They didn't think that was the end of Canelo, which it wasn't. So they were saying that, even Max Kellerman was saying this. Oh, well, if Teofimo Lopez loses and he doesn't get beat up too bad, he can still move on to become a great fighter. He's young enough to do that. You know what I mean? So this out with the old and in with the new. Nah, because in their opinion, they still thought that Lomachenko had some quality years, at least 2 to 3 quality years left in him. Okay? That's what they believe. Everyone wants to be a Monday morning quarterback now after the fact, but really look. And again, I had the conversations, and you can believe me if you want. You don't have to believe me, but I had the conversations. And I look at empirical data. Okay? I look at empirical data. And all of the mainstream media, as I said, I hate to keep repeating myself, everyone over at Top Rank, 99.9% of the people were behind Lomachenko. And even when Lomachenko lost, everyone was trying to make it look like the fight was closer than it was. Oh, it was a draw. It was 115 or 113. It could have gone either way. No, Lopez, if you want to say the fight was competitive, I'm not going to argue with you in that. But again, just because a fight is competitive, just because you think a fight is close, it's almost impossible, in my opinion, to not sit here and say that Lopez clearly won at least 7 rounds in that fight. So if a guy clearly won 7 rounds and you're giving his opponent every benefit of the doubt, and you can only at the very best or at the very least, okay, if you give Lomachenko every benefit of the doubt, then okay, you want to give him 5 rounds, that's fine. Antonio Young, why no rematch clause, Beeb? Come on, Beeb. They did not think he would win. Not everyone. Again, you have to listen to what I'm telling you. You have to listen to what I'm telling you. They did not think Lopez was going to win that fight. Nobody. Open your eyes and look. Or everyone over at Top Rank, all they kept talking about was Lomachenko. They were making comparisons to Roberto Duran, to Marvin Hagler, to Sugar Ray Leonard. They were saying he's the best of all time. Again, if Lomachenko thought he was going to lose or he had a concern, why didn't his team? It's not up to the promoter. The promoter doesn't negotiate the the promoter negotiates the contract, but the promoter has to negotiate with the fighter's management team. Okay? Nobody, name one person in the mainstream media outside of Tim Bradley that picked Teofimo Lopez to win that fight. You guys have to come up with data, information. You can't make a claim. You can't say that I saw an elephant can jump off a building and fly 12 miles, but you're not going to show me the footage. You have to give me information. Andre Ward picked Lomachenko. Bernard Hopkins. All of these people. There's 2 fighters that I know of, Tyson Fury and Tim Bradley. Robert Garcia picked Lomachenko. Everybody picked you. We have to agree that 97 to 98% of the mainstream media picked Lomachenko. Let's go on ringtv.com. Let's Google ringtv.com. Loma Lopez picks. I mean, we can't lie to ourselves now. We can't. Fight picks. Teofimo Lopez, Vasyl Lomachenko, the ring. This was done on October 13th, 2020. Again, guys are lazy. You guys are lazy. You're lazy. Tom Gray, Lomachenko, majority decision. Anson Wainwright, Lomachenko, UD. Lee Groves, Lomachenko, UD. Ron Borges, a guy from the Boston Globe, been writing boxing for years. Lomachenko, UD. Marty McCulley, Lomachenko, UD. Michael Montero, Lomachenko, UD. Gareth Davies, Lomachenko, UD. Norman Fromheim, Lomachenko, UD. Again, show me the data that has people picking Robert Garcia, Lomachenko by decision. Michael Amo Baduka, manager. Loma on points. Duke McKenzie, former 3-division title holder analyst. Okay, there's one Lopez. TKO. Okay. Mark Ramsey, trainer. Lomachenko, UD. Julian Mizone, matchmaker, main events. Lomachenko, UD. Kathy Duva, Lomachenko, TKO. Steve Farhoods, Lopez points. Okay, there's two. Okay. Raul Marquez, Lomachenko points. Cameron Duncan, Lomachenko points. Sergio Mora, Lomachenko, he's a fighter. Lomachenko, TKO 8. Rito Hernandez. So out of 20 people that they polled who are in the mainstream media and the fighters and promote, Lomachenko 18-2. Okay? 18-2. And I can name other people. So let's do the percentages there. Okay? 90% of the people in the mainstream in the mainstream media picked Lomachenko to win that fight. Okay, so if there was all this hype in the out with the old and in with the new, then why wasn't the promotion more pushing Lopez harder, and why wasn't the mainstream media pushing Lopez harder? Let's not lie to ourselves. Let's not just Let's not Monday morning quarterback this. Doesn't matter if regardless of the fact, 119 and 109, doesn't matter. The right guy still won the fight. It's the right guy. It wasn't the same situation where when you had Canelo and Golovkin, that first fight, most people thought Golovkin won that fight. If you were to take a poll on who won over again, I showed you the average fan, like all out of 200 people, they polled 200 random fans. Everyone scored the fight for Lopez. You take the 119 and 109 scorecard, which I think was wide. That's fine. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because the right guy still won the fight. If that fight was a draw to me was worse than the 119-109 scorecard because the right guy would not have won the fight. Who cares? Who cares? It's just a fact. It's just a fact of boxing. You have bad scoring. When Sugar Ray Leonard fought Marvin Hagler, one judge had it 118 and 110 for Leonard. Again, it's just we can't cry and act surprised because this has been going on since the beginning of time. Okay? This has been going on since the beginning of time. We can sit there so what proof does Lomachenko have? What proof does anyone have that these judges were bribed? And what incentive did they have to bribe these judges when Lomachenko was the A side? He was the A side. Oh, he wasn't the A side. Bob Arum promoted, but it doesn't matter. Lomachenko was the guy who had more money, who got more money. He was the guy that was calling the shots. He was the guy that was being talked about. He was the guy that this promotion was centered around. Go back and look. His name was first on the poster. He was the A side. So now all of a sudden, the B side has more leverage, more stroke, more influence than the A side? Stop it. You guys love a conspiracy and you just want to buy into a conspiracy because it's fun. It's sexy. Okay? These same people that are crying and complaining and talking shit about Deontay Wilder for his excuses, you have to be objective and you have to be consistent and you got to feel the same way about this situation here. So what does that have to do with anything? They did accept Teofimo for franchise because that's what he asked for before the fight. He specifically negotiated that into the fight. He asked the WBC to do that for him, and they did it for him. What does that mean? What does that mean? That just because that again, you're grasping at straws here. Listen to everything I said. So because one scorecard was bad, all three judges were bribed. Again, history has shown us that we've had incompetent judging. So what did that judge actually get out of scoring that? Like, what was the benefit of him scoring that fight 119 and 109? Where's the paper trail? Show me the money. Where's the receipts? Where's the receipts? Where's the investigation? Where's the investigation? You can't just say somebody was bribed without having evidence of the bribe being taken place. Where's the witnesses? Where's the paper trail? Show me a check that guy cashed that was kind of shady. There's no evidence. Yeah, it's not like what do you mean it's not impossible? Okay, but that's not enough. It's not impossible that you went out and killed 15 people last night. Can I accuse you of killing 15 people? Because it's not impossible. If you had a gun and you went out in the street and just randomly shot 15 people, is that possible? I can't accuse you of that just because just because nothing is impossible, but you just can't make claims without evidence. Anybody can do anything. A postal worker can walk out and just fucking blast everybody with an AK-47 at the post office. Just because it's possible that he could do that, we can't accuse him of doing it. You can't make accusations without having proof. This is not this is not the 50s, the 50s and 60s. It's not the same environment and the same situation in boxing. Listen, what motivation did that judge have? Like corruption. Okay, so what was the benefit of what was the reward for that judge scoring the fight 119 and 109? Boxing is political. Boxing is political. There's no question about it. But you can't say that people are actually like Bob Arum. There was evidence of him bribing the IBF. Okay? So if something corrupt does happen, it's not going to go unfounded or unnoticed. Saying that all three judges were bribed is a stretch. Hey, you can believe whatever you want to believe. You can believe whatever you want to believe. But you have a right to your opinion, but you don't have a right to your own facts. If you don't have proof that these judges were bribed, I'm gonna say that it's more incompetence. What's up, Lion Killer? How you doing, brother? And again, I do think that these judges have sometimes have a built-in bias because they're sitting there listening to the media, they're reading the headlines, and when you're a judge and you're hearing about how great a fighter is and all the promotion and all the hype is behind a specific fighter, then subconsciously maybe you may have a bias towards that fighter. Now, is that based off of corruption or is that based off of bias? Does that mean, again, I want to see the paper trail. Where are the checks? Where is the suitcase with the money? That's what I want to say. That's what I want to ask. I don't believe that all three of these judges were bribed. I don't believe that the guy who scored the person who scored the fight 119 and 109 was bribed, or Julie Letterman, excuse me, not the guy. You know why? Because Julie Letterman has a history of bad scorecards. She scored the Diego Chavez fight for Diego Chavez over Tim Bradley. So she has a history of being incompetent. So I just think she's a bad judge. She's not a good judge. Adelaide Bird's a bad judge. All you got to look at. So what is the incentive for these judges to turn in bad scorecards? They're just bad judges. They're just bad judges. And shout out to my friend Evan Young, because before the fight, he questioned why is Julie Letterman a judge for this fight? She's a horrible judge. Some judges are just bad. Okay? Some judges are just bad. CJ Ross, 114 and 114. You can't. So all these people are getting paid off to throw in to turn in these scorecards, and then once they turn in these scorecards, they're ridiculed, they're embarrassed. So blame the commission for assign. Don't if you want to blame anybody for bad scoring, blame the commission for allowing these same bad judges to continuously be allowed to score these fights. That's what you have to do. If you want to do that, then that's where the blame lies. So that's what you have to look at. I just think that the risk for reward for taking a bribe in a fight, if you're a judge. Now, AJP 135212, you had it 6-6 or 7-5 for Teo. Who did you pick before the fight? Because once again, everyone that I've talked to that scores the fight 6-6 or 7-5, they're all people who picked Lomachenko before the fight. Did you pick Lomachenko before the fight? Because I just don't see how you could have, of course. So I tend to think that there was a bias that you had for Lomachenko, because I'm guessing you gave Lomachenko the second round. And again, I just don't see I just don't see it. Yeah, you're a huge fan of Teo now because he won, but were you a huge fan of Teo before? I just don't see how that fight could have been. To me, I think a draw is just as bad. I think it's worse than 119 and 109. I just think it's worse. I've watched that second round 1,000 times. And Lomachenko just did not win. For me, in my opinion, it's virtually almost impossible that anyone gave that second round to Lomachenko. It's just impossible. Go back and watch it. Let's look at the punch stats. And again, I'm not a huge punch stat guy, but I think that they did a good job for this fight. And I'm not just saying that because it supports my argument. I'm just being honest. Because anyone can tell this. Anyone could tell that Lopez threw and landed more punches. There's not one person that's going to sit there and say that Lomachenko threw and landed more punches than Lopez. Okay, no one's going to say that. Okay. Let's look at the punch stats. Let's take a look at these punch stats. And let's look at that second round. So Lomachenko threw 12 punches and landed 5. He landed 5 punches that round. Lopez threw 35 and landed 11. So Lopez landed double the punches. And out of those 5 punches that Lomachenko landed, one was a decent punch. So you're going to say one decent punch is going to erase the 11 punches that Lopez landed. And I actually think Lopez probably landed more than 11 punches. When I counted, I counted 15. Okay? Power punches that Lopez landed. He landed 7 in that round. Lomachenko landed 4. So Lopez landed out of 14 power punches thrown in round 2. He landed 7. He landed 50% of his power punches. Lomachenko landed 4. So I just don't see how. And I watched that fight. I watched that round 1,000 times. There's no way I could give that round to Lomachenko. I just can't. Just can't. If you look at round 8, okay, Lomachenko threw 38 punches, landed 19. Lopez threw 66, He landed 19. So they both landed the same amount of punches. That round, like I said, I thought round 8 could have been a swing round. I almost gave it to Lopez. So again, G Funky says Loma didn't throw a punch for 2 minutes in round 2, but somehow, yeah, maybe even like 2 minutes and like almost 2.5 minutes, like 2 minutes and like 20 seconds. He didn't throw for the first 2 minutes and 20 seconds of that round. He didn't throw a punch. You're right. You're right. You're right. It was a horrible. I mean, Ryan says, does Canelo get it done by decision? I pick Canelo by stoppage. I think he's going to stop him in the 8th round. I think he's going to destroy the body. I think he's going to destroy the body. Yeah. Matthew Thompson says, Lomachenko is delusional as Wilder. He may be done mentally if he's talking like that. Well, first of all, Lomachenko already had surgery on that right shoulder, I think, if I'm not mistaken, or he's already had a history of that right shoulder being hurt in other fights. I think in the Campbell fight, I think it was the Campbell or the Linares fight. I can't remember. It was one of those two fights. He had some labrum damage to that shoulder. Now, again, he injured it again in this fight. Or even, I think that they said he may have had some issues with it before the fight, and then he kind of re-injured it during the fight, whatever. So, again, this is my opinion. I'm not a doctor, but judging by, looking at people who have had injuries, once you have an injury in a specific area, that area is never 100%. Just never is. You can get the surgery, whatever. There's no guarantee that shoulder is ever going to be back to what it was. It's already been injured twice. There is a possibility that it could be injured again. Lomachenko is getting older. Same thing with Deontay Wilder. Tore bicep tendons in both arms. That's a horrible injury if you're a fighter. It's a really bad injury. If you have a bicep tendon injury and you tore it doing a specific activity, even if you get the surgery, once again, there is a chance that you could re-injure that same tendon if you're going to continue to do the same thing. If you're not going to modify your activity, or if you're not going to do a different activity, then if you continue to do the same thing that got you injured the first time, there is a chance that you could re-injure that same area. Guys who tear their meniscus, okay, or guys who tear their ACL, they just don't have that. Look at guys in football who've injured their knees. They were just never the same. Like Barry Sanders had horrible knees. Couldn't play football anymore. It's like once you injure yourself, you can get the surgeries, you can do the rehab, and all that stuff can help. It could bring you back to better than what you were before, but you're never going to be what you were at 100%. And you already have a deficient, compromised joint. There is a chance that Lomachenko will never be the same because of the injuries, because of the wear and tear on his body. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Did he do himself a disservice by staying in the amateurs as long as he did? Was that a good move? Was that the right thing to do? Did it take years off of his professional career by spending so much time in the amateurs? Did he have to win 2 gold medals? Did all these things help him, and were they beneficial to helping him in his pro career? These are all great questions. In my opinion, and again, it's just my opinion, and you don't have to agree with my opinion. My opinion is not the be-all, end-all, but in my opinion, because he spent so much, and then he was in the World Series of Boxing thing where they kind of had, those were kind of amateur fights, but they were with big gloves, but they didn't have headgear on, whatever. All this other stuff he did, I think, took away from his pro career. And again, a lot of these Eastern European fighters, that's a great point, AGP, 13512 says, he says, I feel Loma and GGG would have been better off leaving the amateurs earlier. And that's the thing. Like a lot of Eastern European fighters, they spend an awful lot of time in the amateurs. Does that help them? Is that beneficial to them? My opinion, I think sometimes it could be overkill. I think sometimes you could look at it and say, this was too much. I think sometimes you could look at it and say, maybe this wasn't needed. Maybe we didn't have to do this. You can make an argument for that maybe these things were not needed to stay in the amateurs as long as they did. So, you can make an argument for that. But all in all, this is a horrible look for Lomachenko. And question I have to ask, and something I'm speculating right now, is will we see more of this in the months to come? Will we see more of this in the months to come? Will there be more excuses? And how is Bob Arum going to react to this when you have your own fighter that you promote, that you highly touted, that you push so much promotion behind, that you put? We can argue that Bob Arum put this guy above everybody over at Top Rank. He put this guy above everybody over at Top Rank. Now Fury's obviously Fury's got the biggest deal, whatever. He's got making the most money. That's fine. I mean, but again, Fury promoted himself. He went over to the WWE. He's always in front of the camera. He's always talking. He's always giving interviews. He's very friendly to the press. He's very accessible to the press. Top Rank that doesn't, and Top Rank even come out and said, well, Bud Crawford has to. This is the hypocrisy with Bob Arum. Oh, Bud Crawford's got to be like everybody else. He's got to be like Teofimo Lopez. He's got to be like Tyson Fury. He's got to be like the other fighters out there that we promote, that go out there and promote themselves. He's got to take an active role in promoting himself, whatever. And talking all this shit about Terence Crawford. What has Lomachenko done to promote himself? Why can't you do for Terence Crawford what you did for Lomachenko? You're lucky you got a guy like Tyson Fury where you don't have to do that because Tyson Fury is more than willing to do it himself. But some fighters just aren't that guy. Some fighters just like to go there, do their job, train. They'll do interviews if they have to, but they're not guys who want to be out there in the press. They don't want to do excessive amounts of interviews because, again, sometimes when you go out there and you do interviews, you get these sound bites that can be used against you. And a lot of fighters are gun shy about that. Everyone has a different mentality and attitude about that. So in my opinion, why can't Bob Arum do for Terence Crawford what he did for Vasyl Lomachenko? Vasyl Lomachenko was never this social butterfly, okay? But again, Top Rank got behind. I've never seen Top Rank get behind a fighter more, like any fighter, more so than Vasyl Lomachenko. I just never have. I could be wrong, but from what I've seen in recent years, even Manny Pacquiao, once again, Manny Pacquiao promoted himself. He was the guy that had all these things going on outside of boxing. He was a politician. He did a lot of work. Did a lot of charity work, gave a lot back to his people. He had all of these stories that were like the Philippine, like they had like Phil Box and all like the media got behind Manny Pacquiao because of what he did outside of the ring, and that enhanced him, that enhanced his career, and helped propel him to superstardom. And plus, obviously, all of the accomplishments Manny Pacquiao. But Manny Pacquiao had that story. He was that poor kid from the Philippines that came over to the United States and was able to win all these titles, was able to do these great accomplishments and have these great accomplishments. And there was always that fight with Mayweather looming. And you can argue that possibly that helped enhance his career. And probably Manny Pacquiao helped enhance Floyd Mayweather's career, whether he wants to admit it or not. Whenever you have a super fight looming over your head like that, and people are constantly talking about and saying how they want to see that fight, then that's what you have. Terence Crawford has a super fight looming over his head against Errol Spence. Obviously, I don't think we can say that's anywhere close to the realm of a Mayweather Pacquiao. It's not anywhere close to the realm of a Fury Joshua, but it's still a pretty big fight that I think if you have like networks like Fox and ESPN, and you have all those TV shows on Fox, you have all those TV shows on ESPN. If you have those types of outlets, mainstream outlets getting behind this fight, and you know, this fight with Crawford and Spence could be a huge fight if they promote it correctly. So Crawford can say that he doesn't need Spence. Spence can say that he doesn't need Crawford. But I will say one thing. I think boxing does need the fight. I think it would be a shot. It would be a positive shot in the arm if we do get that fight. I know we're kind of going off on a lot of different directions here, but let's close it out. Let's close this out by saying this is a bad look, I think, for Lomachenko. These are strong accusations based off of no proof. Now, you could argue that Top Rank has bribed sanctioning bodies before. Bob Arum was found guilty of bribing the IBF to get his fighters ranked. But once again, we can't draw a false equivalency here. Bob Arum has never been accused or convicted of bribing a judge. Top Rank has never been accused or convicted of bribing a judge. It's one thing having a promoter use their influence to get fighters ranked, but to actually have an active role in determining the outcome of the fight is totally different. You know what? I got my man Lion Killer in there, and I love my man Lion Killer. I'm gonna drop a link for Lion Killer. If you want to jump on, you can feel free to jump on, because I'd love to hear your take on this. Got my man Lion Killer in there. So if you want to jump in, if anyone else wants to jump in, because I'd love to hear other people's takes on this. And I want to see if people are going to be are going to be consistent with this. I just want to see that if people are going to be consistent with this, because I really think that we need to be consistent with this. So I'll wait for a couple minutes. If people want to jump on, they can jump on. If they don't, they don't. It's totally up to them. Totally up to them if they want to jump on. There's no pressure here. If anyone wants to jump on, feel free. But yeah, Lion Killer says if Loma was white American, I believe there would be far more excitement. Probably. I mean, again, you know, Canelo does have has a pretty big fan base. There are a lot of mainstream fans that do know who Canelo is. Is Canelo as big as Floyd? No. Is he as big as Joshua is over in the UK? Worldwide, it's hard to say. If you want to make an argument that Canelo, like who's bigger worldwide, you can make an argument that probably Joshua is, because Joshua has the UK behind him, does have a lot of those Middle Eastern countries behind him. When he did go to Saudi Arabia, there was a lot of support behind him. There was a lot of attention behind him. They did pay a lot of money to have that fight brought over there. So it is what it is. It is what it is. Okay, Lion Killer's here, so I'm gonna let him on.
Hey, what's up, bro?
What's going on, brother?
Nothing, man. Just waiting for the barbershop to open and take care of my son.
Oh, okay. Saturday's a busy day at the barbershop, man.
That's why you call 4 days ahead and get the appointment.
That's right.
Now, you wanted to know what my take was on the Lomachenko situation?
Yeah, let's be consistent here, because we've all been, not just me, but I think you've been critical, and other people have been critical about Deontay Wilder making the excuses. Now,
Mhm.
do we see the same pattern developing here with Lomachenko? Does this sound like sour grapes after the fact? Because again, now we're halfway through December. This fight happened in September, and now we're starting to see the same pattern.
Was it that long ago? Wow.
Yeah, this fight was in September.
Wow.
No, it was October. I'm sorry.
Okay.
My fault.
This is like you said when we were talking yesterday on the phone. You said 2020 seems to be the year of the sore loser.
Yeah.
And people can't get over losses. But the fact of the matter is, the only guy that should be complaining in 2020 is that Dominican kid Jackson against Rowley. He got fucked over completely. He completely dog walked Rowley. That's the only guy that has a gripe in 2020. Period. He was screwed over. Everybody else, it's on them. You know, if you talk about Deontay Wilder should have prepared for the fight. He wasn't prepared for that fight. Tyson Fury was prepared for the fight. Bottom line, Tyson Fury beat him. Usyk started fighting real heavyweights and started complaining about gloves being tampered with or padding removed from gloves. No, dude, you fought a heavyweight. If that were the case, collect the gloves right after the fight and check them. Then you'd have an argument with me, not months later. Lomachenko, if you hadn't messed off the first half of the fight, you would still be champion. It's just like I said to you yesterday, when I initially watched the fight, you know, I was trying to do multiple things, but I thought Lomachenko was winning the fight. When I went back and watched it, he lost the fight. He clearly dropped 7 rounds straight, and then tried to come back in the back half of the fight. It doesn't work that way. The judges had nothing to do with it. You had everything to do with it. It's like the older I get, the less and less responsibility people take for their actions. And that's the crazy part about it. A guy that loses a fight when you and I were coming up, Joe, wants that fight immediately. They want to get their sauce back. They want revenge. Guys that they just sit, gripe, and complain they didn't get the participation trophy. It's not like Bob Arum took away the controlled sequences and environments that Lomachenko's had during his professional career. Teofimo Lopez is not more skilled than Lomachenko, but Lomachenko thought he had it in the bag and thought he could drown the guy, and he couldn't drown the guy. And the guy scored. He racked up enough rounds to be insurmountable, and that's clearly what happened. As far as bribery, we know bribery happens. I know that. I was saying this last night. Referees have dinners with promoters. I know this for a fact. I know that there's influence peddling going on in boxing often and all the time. But at the end of the day, you know how you eradicate influence peddling? Make a fight so ridiculously lopsided or knock somebody out, they can't do anything about it. This is something I talked about this morning. I went live this morning talking about the alternate reality of Triple G and how people are really deriding Triple G over knocking out a totally inexperienced mandatory. The reality is the way you change the trajectory of a fight with a Canelo or a Triple G is you dispatch them. Canelo will always get the decision. You have to go into a fight knowing Canelo's going to get the decision. Up until Lomachenko, Teofimo Lopez, Lomachenko was probably always going to get the decision. So if there's anything there, Bob probably pulled the curtain back for Lomachenko in that last fight. But it's clear cut. He dropped 7 rounds. He dropped the first 7. You cannot win a fight of 12 and drop 7 rounds.
Well, he lost.
You're going to lose.
He lost the 12th too, though. Really, too. If you want, so
yeah. But I'm just saying, you know, just straightforward as it gets. He lost 7 rounds straight.
Yeah.
How do you expect to win? You got to knock a guy out
Yeah.
or knock him
So
down 4 times.
so even he himself said he feels he lost one of the first six, I guess, or one of the first seven or whatever. I don't know. So
I think he.
I don't even think he thinks he won the second round. But
I think.
all these crazy people who gave, like, how could you give Lomachenko that second round? That was I I just don't get it.
I think he's smoking that new weed. I think he's smoking that new weed, the kind of shit that bends your perceptions real well.
Well,
And
well, here's another frustrating thing. Like, we talked about this too. Back in the day, when someone had an excuse, they had a problem, they came right out and said it the day of the fight, the day after the fight, maybe 2 days after the fight. So I misspoke earlier. I said this fight was in September. This fight was on October 17th. We're now today is December 19th. So this is 2 months later. And now we're having more accusations come out. So there's a guy in the chat, George. Oh, what's his name? Dropped off. If you come back on, I'll let you back in. So now you got people in the chat. You got Georgie in the chat saying it's not the same thing as what Wilder did. Wilder, of course, made way more excuses. We're not going to argue that, but we're starting to see now the excuses start to come out like a pattern, similar to what happened in the Wilder situation. So first it was the shoulder. Now and then it was also, oh well, he's before the fight it didn't matter his size, but now, oh well, his size had an effect. He was too big. His reach was a problem for me. So that's another excuse. He was too big. But you knew that going in that he was bigger than you, and you knew that going in that all the guys you fought, a lot of guys are bigger than you. But so now all of a sudden, him being bigger than you is an excuse. So that's two excuses. Now we got the judges. So we're starting to see the same pattern. We're starting to see the same pattern we're seeing in the Wilder situation. Is it the same thing? No. But again, there's similarities. There's similarities to the situation, because as time goes on, what's happening is we're seeing more excuses come out. Now, the question I have is will we see more excuses come out as time goes on even further? Will there continue to be excuses coming out in the upcoming months as well? Will there be more, just like there were with Wilder? So again, this is something that we're just gonna have to take a look at, man. We're gonna have to take a look at. But I think Lion Killer dropped off, so we're not going to be able to get he's probably on the road or whatever. I understand that. If anyone else wants to jump in, I'll drop the link in. If anyone else wants to give their take, if not, then I'll probably get out of here. Maybe I'll jump on later today, like I said, to do that live cast for Callum Smith, Canelo Alvarez. But just let me know if anyone else wants to come on. We can talk about this more. But if not, then we'll close it out. But yeah, like I said, bad look for Lomachenko. Strong accusations without proof. And we'll see what happens, man. We'll see what happens. It's a bad look, bro. All right, so I think I'm gonna wrap it up here, man. Pretty much covered everything. Make sure you check out the Ringside Reporter podcast tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern time, with myself, Eric Lorda. I'm probably going to jump on doing a live cast for Canelo versus Smith. Haven't done a live cast in a long time. I love doing those things, those types of events here on YouTube. So if you want to jump on for that, feel free to jump on for that later. I hope you do. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for people who watch the videos. Thank you for your contributions in the chat. Thank you for everything you do for the channel. And Beeb is out. Till next time. Talk to y'all soon. Have a great day, man. Peace out, everybody.